Hello everybody, I'm GamesBrain, and this is the list of bosses in Sodden Sanctuary from easiest to hardest, as voted on by you, the community. I just want to thank everybody who voted in the polls a few weeks back. You really made this video possible. Oh, quick note, there are no optional bosses on this list. I didn't want to throw off the results by including people who hadn't fought them, so if you want to know, here's a quick mini optional boss list. Number 4 easiest, Ronan Kraekan. Number 3, the Unspeakable Deep. Number 2, the Forgotten King. And number 1, Myrdeal. Really? Myrdeal? The Forgotten King's a hell of a lot harder than her. Anyway, let's get started. Here he is, the number 1 voted easiest boss in the game. And at first I was a little surprised to see this guy here. It's not that he was really difficult, it's more that I had just forgotten about him. This has got to be the laziest boss in the game, no doubt. All he really does is just float around the arena, spawning little tooth heads, which can often be taken out with a single swing if you're geared up for it. The Stench Most Foul does have a few other knockback or poison related attacks, but as long as you're managing the tooth babies, you should have no problem at all taking out this gross monstrosity of the swamp. Speaking of bosses who seem too lazy to attack you, Carsejaw the Cruel winds up as the second easiest boss in this list, and when rewatching my footage I can really see why. When he's not winding up for an incredibly slow and easy to dodge spike attack, he's hitting you with his sword to set up for combos that he just seems to miss, without you even needing to dodge. For as cool as this guy looks and his backstory as a masterless knight, the boss fight with him is just a big disappointment. Now, I remembered having a bit of trouble with this guy, but I think that was simply because I didn't take the time to really watch him. He's always floating around the arena, making the only way to hit him to be just to jump at him, and his attacks are really good at knocking you back in the middle of your jumps. However, if you watch your placement a little bit better, or just take him on at range, it'll be no surprise how this Inquisitor earned his ranking as the 3rd easiest boss. I actually have a funny story about the False Jester. My first time through the game, I forgot to hit record for a little bit while I was making my way through the Sunken Keep. Accidentally, I ran into the False Jester's boss room, and was just so stunned at how easy it was to dodge an attack, I completely forgot to hit record again, and lost my fight with him on my melee character. At range, this guy can sometimes surprise you at how fast he can close the gap between you and him, but for melee characters who are used to dodging or blocking, he is no challenge at all. Next. Okay, I have to disagree with the ranking here, because I don't even think this guy should be on this list. Literally, all of my fights with this guy just consist of me running up to him and beating him to a pulp. And that's it, Dried King boss fight, thank you very much, good night. Okay, so I've heard that if you aren't doing enough damage to him to successfully stagger lock him, he can be somewhat troublesome with his use of fire magic that limits your movement, and some of his other powerful attacks. On the other hand, if you just keep on him, I imagine that most people will have no problem at all making a joke of this boss fight. I can't believe this guy is only number 14. This giant hulking prince killed me more than a few times, and gave me a lot more trouble than many of the other bosses on this list. It might be because I took a shortcut to face him somewhat early, or maybe it was just that everyone else intuitively understood how to face him better than me. However, I tried just about everything to dodge his giant belly slam move, but every single one of my tactics failed. I later found out that as long as you stick close to him, he'll only use slow wind-up moves that can be avoided by going to either one of his sides, but if you are at any kind of range, prepare to be chain belly flop to death. Basically, just don't do what I did here and you'll be fine. The Unskinned and the Architect are a match made in heaven. They're kind of like the Ornstein and Smough of this game, as one is all about smashing you and tossing you around the arena, while the other is nimbler and will keep you dodging her magic strikes. If you take out the Architect first, then this whole thing becomes a lot easier, but that's a lot easier said than done. Other than the optional Forgotten King battle, this is the only fight which requires you to take on multiple bosses at the same time. However, if you can keep your damage up on either one of them, on the whole, it's not too bad. I'm really pretty surprised to see the Queen closer to the middle of this list, as she was one of the easiest bosses in the game for me. As long as you have a decent shield, there's really little she can do. She has some spinning blades and 2 types of charges, one with an extremely slow windup, and one that she can throw out with no warning at all in the second half of the fight. As long as you have your block ready or enough damage to end things quickly, she shouldn't be too much of a struggle for almost any character. If there is any boss that best represents this game, it would have to be the Sodden Knight. Not only does his name make me think of a salty ocean spray, his mechanics also teach you a lot of the skills that will be necessary in your journey. His attacks all have a clear direction, except for his magic, which incorporates a classic platforming skill into the middle of the fight. And the second half of the fight has him chaining these two types of attacks together. He can be a bit of a challenge, but as long as you're staying on your toes and watching him, he's very learnable, which makes him one of the better bosses in the game in my opinion. If you know your abilities and are ready for him, besting him is never easy, but it's always extremely rewarding. Walking into the coveted boss fight puts you in an odd position as a player. Almost immediately, these ghost-like creatures will appear around you, and you'll soon learn that hitting them does nothing. The focus on the fight is to aim for the axe, which the ghosts can grab and attempt to hit you with, but they'll sometimes just throw it to the ground again, allowing you to get some really easy hits in. For as panicky a moment as this fight seems to be aiming for, I have to say that the ghosts aren't really that aggressive about hitting you, which tends to make this one of the easier bosses for me. However, we're right at the middle of the list, so clearly my experience wasn't the same as many people. Let's move on. I have to say, seeing this giant Cyclops with his huge butcher axe was really intimidating on my first run. He's a little bit tricky too, as all of his attacks tend to have some kind of delay, which can really throw you off your game the first time through. The key seems to be sticking close to him, as his jumping attack has a really big hitbox, which can throw you off your guard. Also, you have to be ready for him to follow up the second hit when he swings his axe to his shoulder. As long as you can do this and keep on damaging him, he gives you plenty of chances to heal or to refresh your stamina as you slowly whittle him down. This guy might take the cake for the quickest boss fight in the game. The whole premise here is that, while he doesn't do a lot himself, he's constantly throwing out potions which summon in poisonous beasts or magic spells, which can really wreck you if you're being too aggressive against him. The key is to really get in there and beat him as fast as you possibly can, but at the same time you have to be extra mindful of your surroundings and be ready to run when you see some of his powerful magic get thrown out. However, if you keep on him, I imagine most people will only see this alchemist for a couple seconds. I don't even know how to say this dragon Poseidon's name. Is it Skourzh? Skourzh? I don't know what they're trying to do there, but the fight here is one of the more unique ones in the game. This massive dragon has a giant trident, which he uses to try to control the arena, and of course sometimes to try to impale you with. His massive size also makes him really difficult to roll through, and you can't expect him to fight fairly either. My first death to him was from being locked on one side of the arena, where he didn't give me a chance to get around him before he just flamed me to death. This breath attack is probably his most dangerous one, because sometimes he doesn't give you the room that you need to be able to air dash over it. Still, if you can control your distance and healing, you'll vanquish this squid dragon in no time at all. Holy mother of RNG, we're really getting into the tricky boss fights now. The thing here with this disgusting mass of moving parts and human ornaments is to be able to understand your environment while also dealing with his attacks, breaking floors, and flame spouts. The worst place to be in this battle is on the ground, as his stomping feet can very easily knock you off to your death. There really isn't any good place to fight him in this battle, so the key here is to keep moving and striking out at the men dangling from the branches in order to finish off this bizarre fight before you lose your ground and plummet to your doom. This half-bird, half-scorpion, half-whatever-the-hell creature can really be a roadblock for many players. Not only is he really good at sending you flying with his giant fucking claw, but he also has some seriously powerful lightning attacks that he can just spam on you all he wants. His bites and slashes are really good at knocking back, but the only way to avoid these super strong lightning attacks is to get right up there in front of him again. Then, in the second half of this fight, he just goes crazy, where he's throwing everything he has at you. He can poison, hit, and zap you all within a few seconds, which can end all your hard work at damaging him if you're not careful. 0 out of 10, fuck this guy. Alright, I don't know what to say about this one. I don't even understand how this guy is up here as the 4th hardest boss in the game. He's the closest thing to a real dragon fight aside from the Squidward dragon, but the game heavily implies that you're going to be facing a fire-breathing dragon in the castle from very early in the game. Then, when you go through the castle and you find tons of fire-resistant gear, it should be a pretty big hint at what you should do then. Personally, I came into this fight totally ready. Maybe I was just good at instinctively learning that the way the screen moves after he flies off implies which direction he's going to be coming back at you. But when rewatching this footage, I can see that he really doesn't swoop over you that quickly anyway. I really don't have much more to say about this guy, other than this is what I did immediately after beating him. I'm a fucking legend. When it comes to pure frustration, the Disemboweled Husk takes the cake for me. For one, the run up to the boss room is one of the most obnoxious ones in the game, making you pass by giant creatures and teleporting skeletons who can even follow you into the boss room. To top that off, the Husk then comes equipped with fast slashing attacks that he can alter the direction of, a forward firing blunderbuss which he can spam from the start of the fight, and an upwards AoE which he uses to put distance between you and him. Since his blunderbuss damage is part fire, most shields cannot block 100% of it, and he also has a tendency to back into a corner before using it, meaning there's no way to dodge through him to avoid the damage. I can't tell you how happy I was to finally see this piece of shit bite it. You know, for being voted the second hardest boss in the game according to the community, and also being the final boss of the entire game, I have to say that I just don't get it. I've heard a lot of tales of people struggling with this boss, but I was really surprised to beat him on my first try, in my first playthrough. It seems that almost all of his sword attacks have massive delays after them, giving you a lot of time to recover your health or stamina. By this time, you can also cling to the walls to avoid some of his smashing damage as well. The big threat here is his grab attacks, which are really tricky to dodge through. But even they don't seem to do all that much damage, and they send you flying far away from him, which gives you another chance to heal up. Maybe you guys can tell me in the comments why this guy was voted so high, because I don't get it. And the hardest boss in the game, as voted by just about everyone I'm assuming, is the Witch of the Lake. What's strange about the Witch is that at first she just seems so innocuous. She's in an area with no other enemies, and when the fight opens up, she just seems to float around lazily at you. That is, until she opens up with her magic, which is ridiculous. She has a few different kinds of magic, with her most common being a massive machine gun spray, and these heat-seeking demon balls. And if you're caught by either of them without your shield up, you are toast. Shit, even if you have your shield up, she can still destroy you with a single hit, as these blasts also easily overwhelm your stamina. My fights with the Witch became more and more ridiculous. I literally started stripping off my armor and abandoning the shield altogether, as I was getting one shot at my bulky armor anyway. After 9 long battles, I finally managed to best her. Now, I'll give some points to this battle, as there is a sanctuary directly before it, which gives this fight exactly 1 point. The rest is just stupidly unbalanced. And I'd be amazed to see someone who wasn't just fuming with anger by the time they finally bested her. Congratulations, Witch of the Lake! You are the hardest boss in Sodden Sanctuary. Take a bow, you crazy, crazy bitch. So there you have it, everybody, the bosses of Sodden Sanctuary from easiest to hardest. If you enjoyed this video, I'd really love it if you could take a minute to share it somewhere on the internet. Anywhere, really, please help me get seen for Christ's sakes. After you've gone and definitely shared this video on Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Reddit, and others, be sure to go ahead and hit subscribe. Rating the video would be appreciated as well, and also be sure to go and check out my review of Sodden Sanctuary right here. Spoiler alert, I really liked it. Anyway, that's all from me today. If you didn't share the video, then you're probably a bad person. Thank you again, everybody, and good night.